The Oklahoma Sooners have done great work in the transfer portal and on the recruiting trail, and this roster going into 2026 is significantly better.
You are Locked On Sooners, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma Sooners. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Sooner Nation? Welcome to Locked On Sooners, and thank you for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Shout out to all the everydayers out there. Tune in and subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. College football playoff is here, and FanDuel is the best place to get into the action all playoff long. So visit FanDuel.com to get your college football playoff profit boosts every game day. I'm John Williams of Sooners Wire. Our guy Jay still out traveling for work, but will be back with us later in the week to discuss all of the things that happened with Oklahoma football over the last week. We're going to talk about several things that are really intriguing. The Oklahoma Sooners are trending for the top running back in the 2028 recruiting class. We'll discuss that later on in the third segment and what that means for DeMarco Murray. We'll talk about Jim Nagy and what he's done in his first full year on the job, and this being his first real opportunity to dive into the portal head first. But let's talk about the roster real quick, because this was a topic I left yesterday's show talking about, and I really feel like where Oklahoma stands right now, they are improved from what they were just a month ago. The additions of Trell Harris, Parker Livingstone, Emarian Harris on the offensive side of the ball, the tight ends, Hayden Hansen, Rocky Beers, big time additions that all factor into your starting lineup right away. These are big time additions. And then that doesn't even include the competitive depth that you've solidified your offensive line with Caleb Nita and Peyton Joseph. You are in a really strong position right now. Not only with guys that can come in and start for you right away, but you have guys that also have multiple years of eligibility remaining, whether it's Livingstone, whether it's Peyton Joseph, who has 4 years of eligibility remaining, Caleb Nita, who's got a couple years of eligibility remaining. That really not only sets the tone for this season, but it allows your roster to continue to build on what it did in 2025, as you're going to have these transitional years. You're going to lose guys like after 2026, presuming Isaiah Satania returns. Isaiah Satania is gone. So is Trell Harris. But you brought in a Parker Livingstone who already has some production to his name that can kind of carry the torch into 2027. You did the same thing at tight end. You have Hayden Hansen, you have Rocky Beers, but that helps bridge the gap a little bit to the next season. At offensive line, you did something similar where you brought in guys like Peyton Joseph and Caleb Nita, who have now at least a year or more of college football experience under their belt. Even if in a guy like Joseph's case doesn't have a lot of snaps, he's been in a system for a year. He's been in a strength and conditioning program for a year. That gives him a head start on being a part of that two deep, and then carrying the torch potentially at guard or tackle into the future for Oklahoma after 2026. So really, really love what they've done on the offensive side of the ball. They came into the portal season and said, hey, we've got to upgrade our offensive talent if we want to take that next step in the college football playoff race to being a legitimate contender. I think Oklahoma with their defense was a legitimate contender, but so many things had to go right offensively and on special teams for them to win games over the final month of the season to get into the playoff. And it did. All of those things went incredibly right. Oklahoma, in a lot of ways, got the favorable bounces in most of those games, the favorable kicks, the favorable situations, the circumstances. You could argue the LSU game was maybe the only one they didn't and still found a way to win with John Mateer's 3 interceptions. But the favorable situation that they got there was they were going up against Michael Van Buren, a very inexperienced quarterback, as opposed to Garrett Nussmeier. Where Garrett Nussmeier starting at quarterback, maybe things are a little bit different. Now, he's not as athletic as Michael Van Buren is, so might have been a little bit more of a sitting duck for Oklahoma's defensive pass rush, but they still found a favorable situation. Now, going into 2026, your schedule looks more favorable than it did last year. But what did Oklahoma do? They didn't sit and rest on their laurels. They didn't rest on what they did in 2025 and say, hey, we've got proof of concept. We're good. We can just keep building this thing out like this. No, they were aggressive in the portal. They changed their trajectory in the transfer portal from 2025, where it seemed like they were bargain shopping, the Giovanni Gibsons, the Keontez Lewises, Josiah Martins, like all of those additions from 2025 on the offensive side of the ball in particular, didn't really pan out. They didn't really work out like you wanted them to. The Derek Simmons addition was probably the best one. Isaiah Satania, that was the best transfer portal addition you made, followed by Derek Simmons. But, Giovanni didn't work out mostly because of injury. Keontez, mostly because of injury. But still, for whatever reason, it didn't work out. Defensively, Marvin Jones worked out well. Kendall Daniels worked out well. You got some good production out of those guys. And so what I like that what they did so far, and we'll get into this more in the next segment, is they really attacked the roster and said, hey, we're going to upgrade our offense. And we've got to find guys that have proven production at the power 4 level. Parker Livingstone, Trell Harris, Hayden Hansen, and then you have Rocky Beers, who maybe doesn't have proven production at the power 4 level, but he's got the proven traits to go be effective in the power 4 level. And Marion Harris, proven production in the SEC. And so this roster is looking a lot better. And by my count, they're about done. Like if the 105 roster limit for scholarships is where they're going to end up, and then depending on how, are they allowed to take walk-ons? What does that look like? They're sitting at 107 guys on the roster based on my math. They've had 41 players leave, whether it was the transfer portal, the NFL, or graduation. They've had 14 transfers come in, 13 that are presumed to be on scholarship. And then you had the Wormy kid out of UCO that's going to be coming back to Oklahoma as well. So that's 14. And then you're still kind of waiting on decisions from the NCAA decision from Owen Heineke. You're waiting on official announcements, if we get them, from Isaiah Satania and Kip Lewis. I think everybody's kind of presuming they're going to be back right now. So we'll see. But the roster is pretty well solidified. I don't know if there's really anything more significant that they need to do, unless they think, hey, we can bring in a guy that makes our roster better from the middle to back half. Because you look at the starting lineups on both offense and defense, and they're pretty good. You're really good, actually. Now it's just a matter of solidifying your depth. And so we could still see some more changes, some more additions that they feel like might help their depth and might provide, somebody that can be, a continued project, a developmental piece for either the offensive or defensive line. They could look for a linebacker that could help, provide some rotational snaps and some special team snaps behind, again, presuming Kip Lewis is back, behind Kip Lewis and maybe Cole Sullivan. But if Owen Heineke's back, you got Kip, you got Owen, you got Cole Sullivan as that third linebacker, and then you got James Nesta, Marcus James. So it's hard to look at the roster as it is set right now and think that there's a whole lot left to do. They've done what they've needed to do. They've attacked the positions of need through the transfer portal, and they found not just guys to fit in the depth chart, but they found difference makers on both sides of the football. And they didn't really need to do that as much on the defensive side as they did offensively. But on the defensive side, you found guys like Kenny Ozawalu and Bishop Thomas who have the potential to be significant parts of the defensive line rotation. Cole Sullivan, big time difference maker, not just for 2026, but the future. But they really loaded up on offense. And they've pretty much set themselves in a position to go into next year as a contender. They've got to navigate tough games against Michigan and Texas and Georgia, Florida. There's going to be a lot of tough games on the schedule that look tougher as we get to them in the fall than maybe they look now. And some games will look a little bit easier than they do now. But listen, it's the SEC. You've got a non-conference game against Michigan, against a Kyle Whittingham coached Michigan team. That's going to be a tough game, no matter what the projections are or the expectations for any team. That's going to be a tough one. That's going to be a battle. It's probably going to come down to one score. But with everything that they've done in the portal, I think they're good to go. I think they're ready to roll, man. And that doesn't mean that they won't make other additions or don't need to, continue scouring the portal for big time talents. If they can find somebody out there that is an upgrade over somebody that they have on the roster right now, they'll pull the trigger on it. They haven't been shy about this new NFL model. And the NFL model is, listen, if you're not good enough to hold your roster spot, there's going to be somebody that's ready to take it. And that's kind of the cutthroat nature, the dog eat dog world of the NFL, is that, hey, if you're not living up to the expectations and the standards that are set for our program, then we're going to find somebody else that can. And it's different. Like, that's the reality now. And I know that people don't like the idea that the players are getting paid and we're professionalizing college football. On the flip side of it, this is what the players risk, is that, hey, if you're not living up to your rev share expectations, we're going to find somebody to replace you. And that's kind of the real world a little bit. But again, I think the roster's in great shape right now. And I think they're in a great position to go be a contender next year. And a lot of that is due to Jim Nagy and his staff now having a full year to really dive into what the transfer portal is and look at the roster. We're going to discuss that coming up next here on Locked On Sooners. The college football playoff is here. The national championship game is just right around the corner, and FanDuel is giving all customers even more ways to get in on the action every single game day of the playoffs. Because right now, every college football playoff game day, FanDuel users get a profit boost waiting for them in the app. And here's what I love about it. You get to use the profit boost on the bets you already feel good about. Ride with your favorite when you think a team controls the matchup, like Indiana. I mean, they're looking pretty formidable right now. Then you apply the profit boost and go after even bigger winnings. And when you win, FanDuel pays out instantly, which is perfect for playoff football. FanDuel is the best place to get into the action all playoff long. So visit FanDuel.com to get your college football playoff profit boosts every game day. And again, thanks for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Shout out to all the everydayers out there. Tune in and subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And if you haven't gone and checked it out, go check out the lockedonpodcast.com/everydayer club. The Everydayer Club is a place where you can get ad-free audio access on all of your major podcast platforms like Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts. If you're looking for Locked On Sooners and more Locked On shows, and you just don't want to listen to all the ads, go check that out. If you want to be a part of big time college football discussions and transfer portal discussions, we got it going on in the Locked On Everydayer Club Discord. You get a members only invite to that Discord through the Everydayer Club. That's just $5 a month or $50 a year. There'll be information in the show notes, but you can go to lockedonsooners.com/supercasts to sign up. Again, $5 a month, $50 a year. So looking at Jim Nagy and his staff and what they've done this year, the Oklahoma Sooners, man, they set this thing up to be like an NFL team. And I think that's a really important element of the way that they're building their roster this year. Because so many coaches are so involved in the recruiting aspects of things. And listen, coaches are going to always be involved in the evaluations and the recruiting and meetings and all those things. They are at the NFL level. Coaches are doing evaluations as well. But a lot of times it's the general managers, the scouts, the player personnel people that are doing a lot of the heavy lifting when it comes to the NFL draft evaluations. They're setting the board. They're getting input from the coaching staff. They're allowing what coaches like in their schemes, player types, speed measurements, metrics, arm length metrics, all that stuff to play a factor. But it's the general manager in the front office doing all of the heavy lifting, setting up their draft boards, prioritizing players based on just the tape. Now, college football is a little bit different because you don't get to draft players. It's a free-for-all. It's more like English Premier League soccer or, European soccer, where there's the portal. It's basically free agency, and you can go and find whatever players you want to find. You can make offers on whatever players to buy players and get transfers and all that stuff. In college football, you got to go recruit, and you've got to have proof of concept for this player coming into your program that you can develop them into becoming an NFL player. So what Jim Nagy and his staff has done over the last year, while they've helped solidify that 2026 recruiting class coming into the game late, but they helped, identify guys like Jaden Petty and helped re-secure the commitment with Jonathan Hatton, found some other guys along the way. And listen, the coaching staff, DeMarco Murray, Emma Jones, the coaches all did great work recruiting a lot of these players. Jim Nagy and them, they found some other guys like the Jandro brothers that weren't really all that heralded on the recruiting trail, but you go watch the tape and you can see why a guy like Jim Nagy and his staff, the Lake Dawsons, the Taylor Reds, the Drew Hills, Cale Pearson, Charlie Parkinson, Stacey Ford, all these guys, why they liked a lot of the dudes that showed up on Oklahoma's radar that may not have been on everybody else's radar in the Power Four or in the SEC. But they've set this thing up so that the coaching staff during the season, all they got to do is focus on coaching. They don't have to be grinding tape all season long on potential prospects. No, they can coach. And then when players come in for visits, they can do their visit stuff and build relationship and, recruit like they normally do. But they're also getting an assist from that front office staff. And the way that Jim Nagy has set this thing up, it allowed them to get a head start on the portal too, because they grinded the tape on a bunch of players that could put them in a position to hit the ground running once the portal opened. They identified guys that they thought potentially could be in the portal, maybe from agents contacting them saying, hey, we got these guys that are looking to be in the portal after the season's done. And then once those players got into the portal or announced their intentions to enter the portal, they could really dive in deep. But they had this evaluation stuff done way ahead of when these guys were entering the portal, at least for a lot of these guys, whether it was, Parker Livingstone, because there were rumblings that back in the fall, he wasn't necessarily happy with the situation. Or, you can name a number of guys, but the fact that they were able to get a head start, it put them ahead of the game where they're not having to scramble and then figure out, okay, who do we need to prioritize? Do we just go after the big names like everybody else is going after the big names? Where are some of the value pieces that we could prioritize that we can make a pursuit of? And this is how you end up with a guy like Peyton Joseph. This is how you end up with, guys like, Trell Harris and Parker Livingstone. Yes, there's production there and it's easy to see why they'd go after them, but you get those top tier guys, but you don't just get those lower level, the value guys, the depth pieces without having already done the legwork, without having already done some evaluations on some of these dudes. But this allowed the coaching staff to say, hey, the front office is liking them. And then when they go to recruit, if they agree with the front office evaluations, then it's a lot easier to recruit because you not only have one voice in your ear, whether it's a Peyton Joseph, you got Bill Beatonbow, but you got Jim Nagy and his staff. The Kenny Ozawalu. It's a group, a team effort. It just allows more people to be involved in the recruitment, more people to be involved in the evaluation. But the front office part of it allows Oklahoma to be ahead of the game on the evaluations. So that, again, the coaching staff isn't working to figure these things out. Listen, while they're in the playoff, because players were announcing that they were going to the portal while Oklahoma was preparing for a playoff game. And then in the immediate aftermath of the playoff, then you still have the front office staff that's still evaluating guys while the coaching staff is doing their debriefs with all the players on the roster, doing exit interviews and things like that for the 2025 season. The front office is doing their evaluations. They're getting the board set and prioritizing players. I'd love to talk to Jim Nagy about this because I imagine he set it up similarly to an NFL draft board or an NFL free agency board where it's, hey, these are our A-tier players that we're going to target and we're going to pursue. This is the value that we place on them from a financial standpoint. And then going down the list, AB, I don't know how he tiers it out, but I think maybe they use a color system instead of a letter system, but they have that board set up. They're building that board out ahead of time so that when the portal opens up, it's like, hey, we're good. we're ready to rock. Same thing happens in free agency. Now, in free agency, there's a little bit more understanding ahead of time of who's going to be a free agent because contracts run out and the contracts are known to everybody in the NFL and players are released. And then there's still a period of time where those players can re-sign before official free agency actually opens. The calendar in the college football game is a little bit different in that it doesn't afford that ability. It's like players are portaling, portal season opens like right then. Playoffs are happening, portal season is basically open. So having this front office staff, which I'd give them an A, maybe even an A+ for this first year on the job, having this in place and the job that they've done, immaculate. Now, not perfect. No evaluative staff is ever going to be perfect. They're all going to have misses. You can go back to Bill Belichick and the New England Patriots dynasty, and you can look at players that they missed on. You could do the same. I've covered the NFL draft with the Dallas Cowboys for years, and they missed on players too. They hit on a lot, but they missed on some, first round draft picks. Taco Charlton. Sorry to bring the name up, Dallas Cowboys fans, but there are a number of great evaluators out there that still miss on players. And I know everybody's going to write in the comments, Jade Knott, totally get it. That's going to be one that's going to, be a bummer that hangs over their head for a minute, but let's not also forget some of the good evaluations that they made as well. The Jake Michael evaluation. You don't bring him in. Troy Everett goes down first game of the season. You're up a creek at center a little bit. That's a Jim Nagy evaluation. They brought him in and he was solid for them and good at times, especially in pass pro. The Isaiah Satania edition. Now that was pre-Naggi, but they see the vision in him and they're going to bring him back. But this is like that first real portal cycle for Jim Nagy and his staff. And I think that they've done an A+ job identifying need, finding production to upgrade the offensive roster, and then finding depth that they can continue to develop down the road. So A+, great job, Jim Nagy and your staff. I can't wait to see how you continue to build on this, but the 2027 recruiting class already gives us a sign like this thing is heading in the right direction. And when everybody left it for dead this time a year ago, man, how quickly things can change when you win some games and you get good evaluators. And I mean, the coaching staff, like Brent Venables taking over the defense, like that was a great call, an absolutely great call. And that helped set the tone for the defensive side of the ball. All right, let's get into a little bit of 2028 recruiting. I know 2028 is not a real year, but we're going to talk about it anyway. Coming up next here on Locked On Sooners. Once again, thanks for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Shout out to all the everydayers out there. Tune in and subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. The Oklahoma Sooners are trending in a positive direction for one of the top running backs in the 2028 recruiting class, Micah Rhodes. He's actually the number 1 running back in the country, according to 247 Sports. Rivals has him at number 4 in the nation, according to Rivals. Sorry. He's a top 10 player in the nation. And this is one of those guys that you can see it. He's coming out of his sophomore season of high school and he looks the part. He is a physical runner. He runs through tackles, playing varsity football as a sophomore, running through tackles. He's got really good wiggle to him. Love his lateral ability. Love that he is able to get downhill in a hurry and use some of that power that he's got working for him. And he's somebody that he does not shy away from blocking. And that became a big point of contention this year for Oklahoma, as their high prize running back did not want to block, it sounded like. But Micah Rhodes does not shy away from blocking. They use him in a lot of circumstances as a lead blocker for some quarterback stuff. They use him as a blocker in the screen game where he's split out into the slot, and they're using him in that way. He just runs with power. He plays with power, and he does not go down easily. He's got great contact balance, and he's got really good vision and patience. I think that's an underrated aspect of the running game, is just being a patient runner, because those holes don't always open up immediately. And you've got to have that ability to wait it out. And he shows that, man. He seems like a player that is beyond his years in development. And hopefully he hasn't peaked too early, because he just looks really good. And the Oklahoma Sooners have put themselves in a really good position to finish out a really strong recruitment potentially. Now it's way early in the 2028 class. We're over almost 2 years from the 2028 early signing period, but Micah Rhodes has Oklahoma in his top 3, along with some heavy hitters, Texas A&M. So this is one of those pieces that it's going to be a difficult recruitment, no doubt about it. But to be in his top 3 at this point in the recruitment is huge. He's from Klein, Texas, down there near Houston. So it's going to take DeMarco Murray and staff going deep into Texas territory and pulling out a gem. Like, that's not an easy task, but we've seen him do it before, and they can do it again. So love the kid, love what he's about, love the way that he plays the football, the game of football. You go to his huddle, and I highly recommend everybody go watch his huddle, but he has like his huddle broken down, and he's got one set of highlights that's just him blocking. That's it. He's like, Micah Hudson, sophomore season, blocking. I'm like, yes, this guy, like, let's get this guy. He's got pass catching snaps. He's got obviously a lot of, carries. He's got one that's just titled hard runs, which that fits into a DeMarco Murray type of runner more than anything, because I remember Jason Garrett coining the term for DeMarco Murray, dirty runs. DeMarco Murray was great at getting those dirty runs, those dirty yards. And that's what we need. We need somebody that can churn out those 3-yard, 4-yard carries in addition to popping the big runs, because the SEC is full of 3-4 yard carries. Like, you're not always going to go the distance every time you touch the football. So, and the other part of this I want to discuss is, this is the difference, I think, between DeMarco Murray and Joe John Finley. I know the running back situation has not been great for Oklahoma over the last 4 seasons. You can go back to 2022 was probably the last time that we had something significant. Now, Gavin Sawchuk's into the 2023 season was fantastic. 6 straight 100-yard games. It's just he could not stay healthy. And the offensive line in 2024 just was hot dog water because of all the injuries. But DeMarco Murray has never failed to recruit at a high level. He's always recruited really, really well. The Torrey Blaylock edition was fantastic. That was an awesome addition. You remember, he had Hollywood Smothers on campus. Hollywood just decided he was homesick and wanted to go back east. And that's the way it goes sometimes. It's unfortunate. Now he's going to be at Texas. Great pickup for Steve Sarkisian and the Texas Longhorns. But he's recruited really, really well. A lot of the things that have been out of his control, the injuries, guys not, necessarily being able to stay healthy or picking up the offense or, living up to the expectations. Sometimes that happens, but at least he's recruited well. Like, the play, you can see the talent that he's recruited. Where Joe John Finley, the recruiting was really up and down. Got some good wins in Caden Helms and Devon Mitchell, but neither of those lived up to expectations. For Helms, it was injuries. For Mitchell, it was all in his head or his heart, whatever you want to call it. But Murray, I mean, he recruited well. And, Javonte Barnes, had a good true freshman season, never really built off that. And there were some limitations, but you never questioned his heart or his work ethic or his toughness or his willingness to do what he needed to do, except for maybe in 2025 when he wanted a red shirt. But that's just the game, right? So I'm willing to continue to give DeMarco Murray more time because I see the talent that he's recruited. Xavier Robinson, man, that dude is a talent. Torrey Blaylock, that dude is a talent. Those guys are good. Jonathan Hatton, my goodness, that guy's a talent. Zephan Walker, he's a good player too. He's a talent, man. This running back room looks really good for 2026. Now it's just a matter of, hey, we need some good injury luck at the running back position, and we need the offensive line to step their game up from a run blocking perspective. And if both of those things can happen, Oklahoma's going to be in a really good position to have a bounce back year running the football because they've got to get better running the ball. Now, with all the weapons that they have on the wide receiver position, and hopefully John Mateer taking a step as a passer, that should open some things up in the run game. Ben Arbuckle also has to be more determined and more committed to running the football with his running backs, just turning and handing the ball off, not an RPO, not a read option, just hand the ball off, let the offensive line get downhill, run the ball. Jason Witten coming in, Hayden Hansen, Rocky Beers blocking tight ends here. That's going to give them another element that helps their run blocking improve, but it comes from, you got to have good luck on the injury front, and you got to have an offensive coordinator that's committed to running the football. And I question whether or not he is, or whether or not he is convicted in the run game. And you've got to have conviction in running the football. It's not always going to be pretty. It's not always going to hit for big runs, but you got to keep running it, because running it has an effect, whether it's for 2 yards a carry or for 5 yards a carry. It still has an effect. It affects the defense. So we've got to figure out a way to run the football. But to bring this all back to Micah Rhodes, this is a guy that Oklahoma, if you're going to go all in for a running back in the 2028 class, this is that guy. This is your Jonathan Hatton, because you can see as a sophomore that he's got that ability to be a big time difference maker at the collegiate level, especially in the SEC, because of the way that he runs with physicality and can run through tackles, and with his contact balance, he's going to get bigger. He's going to get faster. He's going to get stronger as the course of his high school career goes. And that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Sooners. Thanks so much for tuning in, being a part of the show. Subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Also, go check out the Everyday Club at lockedonsooners.com/supercast or lockedonpodcast.com/everyday club, and find Locked On Sooners to sign up for $5 a month or $50 per year. But until next time, for my guy Jay Smith, I'm John Williams. Make sure you're following the show on all of your favorite social media platforms at Locked On Sooners. Until next time, I'm John Boomer Sooner.